Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. It is a pleasure to be with you wherever you may be joining us from. Tonight, we are broadcasting live to YouTube and Facebook. So if you're watching live, comment and let me know where you're listening from. My name's Cade Moyer, and tonight I will be your tour guide into our journey into the unknown. And later on, we will be having some open lines. Now, if you're watching this live, the number is 0730403096. You can call in and join in the conversation that we're having, because tonight I am joined by a very good friend of mine, Attila Kaldy. Mate, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, mate. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has been a while. You're the most returning guest to the podcast. I think this might be your sixth time coming on the show, and it's never enough in my opinion, because I love it when you and I get together to chat, because the weirdest things always seem to happen whenever you and I talk. Like, I have gone through a couple of podcast recorders because for some reason they always seem to go a little haywire, like a ghost is in the machine. I can't explain it. The road technicians can't explain it. They just send me a new machine and say best of luck.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop sending those infrasounds over to you, mate.
I will officially go on the record that Attila, you have one of the most popular episodes of the podcast of all time, with the Australian Skinwalker Ranch episodes. And during those episodes was when we had some of the most intense action, I guess, ever happened, because I was having weird knocks on the walls and things like that, and you were having things kind of flung off your desk and stuff like that. It was rather intense. We actually had to cut our episode a little bit short because of what was going on.
Yeah, I clearly remember all that. I mean, put it this way, I'm not surprised that things start to happen when we talk about that place. I mean, even off air, when the conversation comes up in the lounge room when my wife and I are talking about that location, because she had a fair share of experiences there too. We start to hear and feel things, and it's quite interesting, because it's almost like you go there once and it never leaves you. I mean, you can leave from there, but it's almost like Hotel California, you can always visit, but you can't ever leave.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, I had the pleasure, because I have been absolutely infatuated with this location, that it's we won't tell the public where it is. You and I know where it is, because I guess it's not really a safe place to go for multiple reasons. But ultimately, you took me to this location just a few months ago, and while I didn't get the opportunity to go inside, we did have the ability to kind of peer through a couple of security gates and things like that, and you kind of pointed out some of the areas where some of the most unbelievable activity happened. And I tell you, puts a completely different perspective on it when you can see how close some of these events may have happened.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad that I had a chance to actually show you, Cade, because we were on our way on a shoot, and we thought, oh, let's take a quick detour and drive past this location, because you're right. I mean, you can describe it and talk about it, but it's not until you actually see it all stand there do you really start to appreciate what that place is like and where it's situated, because the location and where it's situated is quite different from other similar facilities that you would expect to expect to see or expect to visit. So its location's very unique, and I think that has a lot to do with what's actually going on there.
Yeah, and it's one of these locations that I think we could probably talk about this without giving it away, that it is actually way more remote than I expected it to be, because
Mm,
while it is located in, I guess, like a Sydney area, my gosh, it feels like it's a world away from everyone. And when you are there, it's so isolated, and I can
mm.
see, you can actually feel the energy of that location is so different from anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember those feelings quite well, and like they happened yesterday. And when things start unfolding there, and I'm not talking about scary things, I'm talking about terrifying things, because this place just seemed to take things to a whole new level. You feel very isolated and very alone out there, even though you're with a crew, or with two or three other people. Regardless how many people you have, you do feel very much alone out there, because you can try to run there. You are miles away from the nearest property that could potentially even help you. So yeah, it definitely has that sense of isolation, and that sinister. Even the location itself, and especially when you go there on a rainy day, it just has that sinister atmosphere about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point that you bring up, is about the complete isolation of it being almost an element of its own, I guess, fear. Because if anything does go down, and things have gone down, you yourself have experienced physical harm there, that
Absolutely.
really adds a whole other dimension of terror to it. Not just the fact that you are in one of the most terrifying locations, but there's a health and safety aspect of terror to it as well, where medical care is literally hours and hours and hours away.
And there have been occasions where vehicles did not start when trying to make I wouldn't say a quick exit, but a reasonably well decided and quickly executed, pack up stuff and let's get out of here type exit. We've had situations where the vehicles wouldn't start. But I mean that extends beyond my experience too, because the previous owners have had some very interesting experiences there. In fact, if I do remember correctly, one of the owners actually sold the property because they believed it was cursed.
Wow. Wow. That's intense. And that's a real life implication of a haunting that goes to another level, because it's a lot of work to sell a property, especially a property like that. So
Mm.
that really adds a lot of credence to the craziness of that kind of location, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Even tradesmen um, who are asked to do some work there, and I'm going back here, 15, 20 years ago now, and these tradesmen were hired to do some restoration work, some repainting, redecorating, and this is before it actually completely fell apart. And we found out that the tradesmen just one day in the middle of the day just got up and left, and they left all their tools there, and they just got up and left, and they never came back. So I think that
Wow.
in itself kind of sort of tells you, if you look outside the idea of paranormal investigations and just visiting that place because of what it is. These people had no particular interest in the unexplained or the paranormal, yet something did unfold there that made them just leave the location and leave some very expensive tools. And we're talking power tools, ladders, tins of paint that were freshly opened. So it's an interesting background story.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact is, at the end of the day, that's those guys' livelihoods that they're leaving behind. And you just don't leave that stuff behind for no reason at all. It's going to take something pretty full on for you to just go, nope, just forget about it. We're going.
It's one of those nope moments, really, where they just, nope, that's it. We're gone. We're done with this place.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But to kind of like swing things around a little bit, like the whole reason we were there is you and I have actually teamed up to work on a project together, which is rather exciting because anyone who listens to this podcast, they may know about this already, but on the show, there is quite an infamous location that has popped up quite a few times. And I have been contacted personally about this location multiple times, and even areas around this very, very small city called Hill End. And you and I went out there on a trip to find out what is going on at Hill End. And I tell you what, it was a genuine it was crazy from literally the moment that you picked me up.
Yes, it was. And I'm just reflecting now because of what happened afterwards and the journey, pardon me, the journey that actually led us to that particular day, led us there, and how things were almost obstacles that were thrown in front of us to actually stop this project. I mean, I've been filming the paranormal for, crikey, almost 20 years now, maybe even, about 20 years now. And I've been to some really interesting places, but I've never experienced anything like this before, not at this magnitude. I mean, the lead up to the crescendo, was fairly traumatic, for lack of any better word for it. But it was, and even the journey there was quite interesting, and especially when there was a point where we crossed over and you can actually feel the difference. It's almost like the atmosphere. I don't know if I think you actually picked up on that too, Cade, that there was a threshold, and once we passed that, all bets were off. You could tell and feel that there was something just not right. You had that nope feeling in the back of your mind again, and you just wanted to think, is this a good idea doing this? Because considering where some of these places are, and they're not exactly close to help or anything like that. I mean, during the day you do get some off-roaders there. But at night time at that place is just completely isolated and dead, for lack of anything else. But
absolutely,
no pun intended, rather. But yeah, mate, it was interesting.
It really was. And what I'd like to do is for the people who are watching this, who may be listening to the replay of this, make sure you go back and watch the video version of this, because I'm going to play just a little teaser from a small section of the doco that we kind of pulled out to show people. So for those who haven't seen this yet, sit back and enjoy the next 90 seconds of teaser for our little doco that we've been working on.
So you could imagine that the crew were here, and at night time you'd get these random flashes of light up the side of that mountain.
How long was the experience for?
Well, it went for a few hours, and that's what prompted me, because I just got fed up. And I said to the guys, I'm going to check this out and see what it is.
So you saw the lights flashing over there.
So we saw the lights, and then I told them to stay here. We had a 5-watt CB radio, so the distance was fairly decent. So I decided to go down there. This is at night time. I decided to go down there with a torch. And basically the idea was they followed my torch. I flashed back every now and then. They basically said, it's right above you. So that's when I decided to scramble up the side of the hill. And as I was scrambling up, that's when that creature appeared in front of them.
I don't know about you, Attila, but that gets me so amped up because it just takes me right back to the moment of what happened that weekend.
Mate, I look like crap in that. Seriously, you can tell that something was not right. Oh man. Oh geez, but it is what it is. I mean, you know, I did fall seriously ill during the shoot.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
you know, I can't hide it, and I still wear the after effects of that illness till today. So, and that was just one of many, of a line of obstacles that were thrown in front of us. It was almost like something was trying to stop us from filming this project. I think
absolutely.
I think we might elaborate a little bit more on that in the actual documentary film. But mate, that story still gives me the heebie-jeebies. I mean, just thinking about it, really, it's not easy to remember back on some of these experiences, and some folks might think, oh well, you know, yeah, how cool was that? You know, if they believe the story, that is. But look, I mean, how extraordinary some of these stories are. You spend enough time out in the wilderness chasing the unknown, it'll chase you back. Yeah, just remembering, and even though I keep my cool and try to be collected as much as I can, inside there's this swelling of uneasiness and dread every time I actually talk about this. So I try to hide it as much as I possibly can, but some of these experiences were very testing, and took me years to process the information and get over it. And a lot of people don't realize how traumatic some of these experiences can actually be, because you are dealing with different variations of reality. And I'm not talking about just dimensions. I'm talking about, if I did this, what would have been the outcome? Would I still be here had I pushed it further? Did I make the right choice? And if I did I miss out on one of the biggest opportunities that you can possibly have in your life? So, you know, these questions constantly wage war in your mind, and you try to make sense of it and try to have some kind of, you know, realistic medium that would basically satisfy your own, you know, queries. But it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you do achieve that, and other times the battle just keeps going on and on and on again. So yeah, you do get some post-traumatic shock syndrome out of it, and you deal with it for a number of years, and then you get over it and just push on to the next episode of your life. But yeah, and I'm glad that you had the opportunity to experience some of that stuff out there, because we were talking about this the other week, how some of the original crew members that I took out over 20 years ago, some of those people aren't alive anymore. And I've always had a keen interest in videography, and even back then in 2001, so I actually documented everything. And we have those archive footage, even though it was on high 8 tapes, and I had to buy some archaic machinery to transfer it over to digital. But I managed to salvage these 20-plus-year-old tapes, and we'll have those in the documentary.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is definitely going to add this really unique aspect to the documentary, is the fact that we're able to essentially create a bit of a time machine from an exact point in time where you can reference the what happened to us when we went and what happened to you back then. And it's going to show a lot of parallels that I think the audience is really going to sink their teeth into.
Well, I've got a question for you, Kate, and I don't know if we should actually mention this when we were down near the river. What do you think? Should I make a quick mention of that?
I think so. I think so, because it is rather odd what what we found
Yeah.
down there.
And the odor hit us first, didn't it?
Oh,
when we
boy.
no, was it bad? When we found a nice little collection of animal mutilations there. My question to you is, Kate, how did you feel when you saw that? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you've actually experienced animal mutilation, at least not on such a scale. What was going through your mind when you first saw this?
Yeah, it was really, really odd, because it's easy to put down a mutilation of, maybe one or two animals. But when you are constantly running into mutilation after mutilation after mutilation in a rather congested area, it makes you wonder what is really going on. And the fact that there is so many tunnels in that region there, it makes you go, what on earth is doing this? Because not only are the mutilations calculated, in my opinion, because you can see that they're either going for one part of this animal or one part of that one, but they are all in essentially the same location. And I don't know, I am absolutely no animal expert, but I can't imagine that's something that just would happen naturally with pigs or with dogs or anything like that. Because I kind of feel like those types of animals would pull maybe these animals to bits and spread them all apart, not bunch them all together. And it was honestly walking into a death pit, because the smell was next to unbearable. Thank God my nose barely works, but I know that if I can smell it and it's putrid, I could only imagine how that was for you, because it was gag reflex the entire time.
It was complete carnage, to be frank. And some of those, I mean, we did examine some of those mutilations there. Some of the corpses there of these animals were far gone, because, I mean, it's hot out there, so decomposition is going to be accelerated. But some of the animals that were lying there, I mean, the pieces that were missing were almost like surgical precisions. The cuts were really well done, really finely done. So whatever was actually destroying these animals weren't taking everything. They were taking certain parts, as you said. But the disturbing thing is that some of those animals were baby animals. And and what would actually have the stomach and the sense, the lack of empathy, towards such, beautiful creatures is just beyond me. Okay, wild dogs would rip it apart. We know that. Pigs would make a mess of it and they'll drag the corpses everywhere. So you'll have bits and pieces everywhere. I've seen what wild dogs and wild pigs can actually do to dead animals, and they make a complete mess out of it. Some of these corpses were actually laid next to each other, which suggested that we were dealing with something a little bit far more intelligent than your average run of the mill critter that's running around the wilderness that has predatory instincts. But definitely, and the other thing is that where these animals were placed were near these tunnels, and there weren't just one. There was a whole collection of tunnels there, old. Some of them were old mine shafts, and we know that because they were carved out, but some of them were natural formations. And what was really interesting is that some of these, where you have the sandstone, some of the dust and the sand that was obviously that's accumulated over time and has this fine layer on the ground, you're looking for prints, and it's almost like something cleared the way there to mask its activities. So yeah, it was just really really strange. It's nothing I've ever personally experienced. I've heard of stories similar to this, not in Australia, but overseas. But I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but I certainly feel that we're dealing with something a little bit more extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you. And I've actually got a couple of really good questions from people happening in the chat here. One that really stands out to me is, and I'm going to put it on the screen. It's from Mish, as he said, so no other animals fed on the corpses. No, they were completely undisturbed everywhere else where they weren't missing parts, essentially. And that was a really odd thing. Like the flies weren't even covering these animals. It was so bizarre.
That's right. And there was this other underlying odor. And I don't know if you actually picked up on it. We did discuss it. There was this other odor there that was, I've never ever smelt anything like it. It was putrid. But it wasn't associated with the decomposing, although that was really overbearing. But when we headed closer to these cave systems, I mean, I know what bats smell like and bird feces, but this was another smell. This was really, there's a very strong, pungent smell. It was almost like a mixture between garbage and something else that was garbage and sick. I think they're probably the closest, and urine. That was the other sort of thing I can, I guess, put into the mix of this disgusting odor that I don't know. Do you remember picking up on that? But we're getting closer to.
I didn't, but that's not to say it wasn't there, because again, my nose is one of these funny things that it's either going to work or it's not. I've been absolutely too many cricket balls to the face for me has ruined my sinuses. But yeah, I do remember it was just this absolute, like the air was just thick with just disgustingness.
Yeah, and I think it started raining shortly after. But the lucky thing is, I know we did have a thermal imaging camera with us, so we were able to stick it in as far as we possibly can into some of these openings to see if there's anything, anything unusual living in there, or anything else that may be living in there that we could identify. But they were empty, they were barren, basically. There were some tunnel systems there that just kept going on and on, so obviously we wouldn't have been able to pick up on anything unless we decided to venture in. But I don't think, considering what was laying in front of us, I don't think I had the guts to crawl in. And I've seen that movie before. No thanks.
Yeah, and I did try to give you some friendly encouragement to go into a tunnel.
Keep going, mate.
That I think
for the sake of better content.
But unfortunately, you weren't too keen on that one. And to be honest, I don't blame you, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to be in that tunnel. You pop yourself halfway through it and you come face to face with a wild boar in there and just get torn to pieces.
Yeah, not the way I imagined going out, but it definitely was a very interesting experience. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, this is the first time that I've ever gone on like an investigation type of thing. And the fact that I've gone to such a place of such incredible high strangeness has really opened my mind even further into what is out there, because we encountered so many things that I literally can't fit a puzzle piece of that goes there. That's what that was.
No, exactly. And we had a plethora of different phenomena that we were dealing with. And then even at nighttime, from UFOs to apparition-like phenomena, or at least disembodied voices. But it was almost like it felt like you're in a bubble, like you've just stepped out of this reality and entered another one. That place again, it's I don't know, that there are just some places around the world that seem to have their own, I wouldn't say consciousness, but their own essence, their own world, if you like. And it's almost like you step into another world, and you have the whole Oz effect happening, where everything around you just goes completely silent, and it's almost like, oh goodness me, where am I? Because if I have to run, can I actually run out of here? But there's some interesting places, and I've experienced them even over in Europe while filming over there, and especially here in Australia. There are quite a few places that just have this, like I said, this essence about them. They're its own unique. It's almost like they're sitting on some kind of, I don't know, some kind of weird geology.
Yeah, I actually saw someone in the comments here mention ley lines, and I'm no expert about any of this stuff, but I do know that Hill End is an old gold mining town. So, and there seems to be a lot of really strange activity around gold, and with a town that has such a, how do I put this, interesting history such as Hill End, it makes me wonder if there is like these strange connections to ley lines or gold or elements in the ground there.
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because that Skinwalker Ranch happens to be on, and I actually viewed this years ago when I picked up a map from it was basically a geomagnetic survey of Australia, and you're looking at the geomagnetic lines or the field lines and where they run. And funny enough, where this Skinwalker Ranch happens to be sitting on one of these geomagnetic field lines. So look, I don't doubt that for a second. There could be these geological aspects of our planet could well and truly contribute to these abnormalities. It's almost like the Bermuda Triangle. I know that some people put it down to abnormal weather patterns there, but then again, there have been some interesting reports, anecdotal reports coming out from that region, where people have experienced other things that weren't related to weather patterns. So look, I definitely, it would be interesting to actually see if that region actually runs in an area, or sits in an area where geomagnetic field lines either intersect or run parallel.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. We should note that. I wonder if we can get someone to talk about that, because it does raise a lot of questions about how does a magnetic field like that, what are the implications of that? And if one of those things is that it creates a, maybe not like this might sound a little woo, but like portals to different areas. I don't think that's the case, but if it is almost like a highway of unexplainable traffic, I think that does raise a lot of questions.
Just to give you a bit of an insight too, many years ago when I was there, I actually took a device with me. I mean, most people have actually heard of a tri-field meter, which measures electromagnetic interferences. And I actually took one with me out there, and there were interesting spots that literally sent this analog meter to full-scale deflection, and this was at the highest possible setting. Now, yeah, okay, we are talking about milligauss here, so we're talking about very low frequencies, but I wasn't able to measure the true scale of that because the meter couldn't handle anything larger than I think a few hundred milligauss. So it actually went beyond that. So there were areas there. Now, okay, we can start talking about subterranean water because that could potentially, contribute to electromagnetic interference. But we were high up, so we're not sitting on ground level, and the Turon River was dare to say a couple hundred meters below us. So I could kind of rule that out. So there is something there. There's definitely something going on there. And not only that, I mean, milky quartz, there's a whole array of milky quartz there that are in perfect formations. And sometimes that actually happens when there's when you have electromagnetic radiation in areas, whether it's naturally produced or whether it's some kind of geothermal or geological aspect to it or contribution to it. I mean, who knows? But definitely at that height, I certainly thought it was quite peculiar.
Yeah, that is actually fascinating. And, it just goes to show you that the potential of unknown, unexplainable activity has gone on for almost eternity in this location, because you experienced it 20 years ago, and that's when you were doing those experiments. It boggles my mind that this could be something that could be there for ages.
Absolutely, and I don't know if you recall me telling you about this report that I was given many years ago when I was involved in the UFO community, and one of the it was another group, and one of their members actually told me a story about their father, I believe. There's no written record or anything. It's just basically passed on verbally. But to cut a long story short, either his father or his uncle back in the 1950s was actually riding on the bridle track near Hill End and actually saw this craft sitting in below. I mean, he was on the trail there, so it was actually in like a small valley. And there were two beings there that that were effectively illuminated by some kind of bioluminescence, and they were white, and they were what appeared to be was they were taking soil samples, and they were standing next to this egg-shaped craft, and I think he spooked these two beings, and they basically looked up, saw him. They took this container with them. They went into the craft, and the craft basically just vanished where it was sitting. So, I mean, that's like 70 years ago, plus.
And that's so well before popular culture had a grasp on little green men or anything like that. That is something that would have been completely out of the annals of the unknown. So that is mind-blowing that an encounter like that happened at Hill End, a place that is so infamous for this unexplainable activity. It really is just this genuine melting pot of uncertainty. And I tell you what, it really opened my mind, because I'm always on the other side of the stories, and now I'm one of those guys who has a story that is really hard to kind of fathom and explain, and it really does give me an insight into how difficult it can be for people to talk about or explain the encounters that have happened to them, because if you're not in these encounters, or if you're not capturing those moments, it can be extremely difficult to portray what happened to you. Because even now, some of my best mates, I go, did anything happen on your experience? And I said, mate, we got the full gamut. Like you name it, it almost bloody happened. And it leaves me in a sense of wonder of like how you said earlier about wondering if we went 20 more meters, 30 more meters, 100 more meters, what would have happened? And it's one of those things that I totally empathize with you about that mindset of you can totally get caught in these rabbit holes and wanting to just always dig that little bit deeper, because every night I just wonder, what if we just went that little bit further? Would we be here?
Yeah. There were a few instances that threw that question at me, and especially at Hill End. And there was this other thing that I've mentioned about before. It was almost like this curtain of light that was emanating from the actual trail. And a colleague who was researching with me at the time, we were getting closer and closer, and we stopped, we went back, we stopped, we went forward, and we just didn't know what to do. But you had this feeling of dread. And no matter how curious we were to find out what the hell is causing this, by the time we made up our mind and said, let's stuff it, let's just go. And by the time we did that, this thing had actually disappeared. So again, that whole moment there plays in your head over and over for years, making you sort of, I guess you play these different scenarios in your head. It's this whole what if scenario. Had we gone in, was it a portal to another dimension? And what if we walked through and we had the opportunity to come back? We could have been able to talk about it because we had this experience. But what if it was a one-way journey? You leave your family behind, and people think that you've just become another, like they would say in America, 411 case. So yeah, it's really tough. But at the end of the day, I think that while you're still here, while you're still breathing and talking, I think you made the right choice. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, it was such an experience to go on, because I know that I speak to so many people who have encounters, and they want to have more and more and more. And I can see why people get addicted to this type of thing. Because it's a rush. It's exciting. It's encountering things that you don't want to know. And I will I was really gung-ho with this whole everything that we did, because I was ready to jump in head first to every situation that we did, and I was ready to run off into the bush on my own. And I think that really paid off for us. I think it's going to show off in the documentary, because some of the things happened because we pushed hard to make it happen.
Absolutely. And if you don't sort of push the envelope, if you constantly remain reserved, then you do miss out on a few things. But I think, having said that, I think you really need to be very mindful of your own safety and the people's safety around you, because you can push it that one step further. And that's all you need to do to make a difference between either being here or not being here, or being harmed or whatever. So it's not like every single situation is deadly, because that's not the case. But there are times when you just don't know what could have happened.
Yeah, and there's every chance a situation can get completely on top of you, and you're just caught in a terrible situation. But something I do want to bring up here, Attila, is someone made a comment here. Australian Outdoor Man, he said that he has a property at Hargraves, which is roughly 41 kilometers from Hill End, and says definitely some odd things out that way. A lot of cockies, aka farmers, don't like talking about it, and they've had a yowie on their property. So I can definitely attest to the fact that no one wants to talk about the ongoings.
especially in small communities like that, because everybody knows everyone. And I completely understand that, you know, if you go to the local restaurant or to the pub or to a cafe there and then just start talking about it, you know, you still have to literally live with these people, because it's a small community. You know, it's a close-knit community. Everybody knows everyone. Everybody helps everyone. I mean, I guess not all communities are like that, but a lot of them are. And I think people are just careful about talking about some of these encounters because of the repercussions and the way others will actually look at them and approach them. Because, yeah, they may have known you for 20 or 30 or 40 years, but, you know, people have an idea about your character, but that can change at a drop of a hat. And you just don't know how people will react or respond to that. So I think, and I don't blame these people taking the safe route and just, you know, not talking about it. But the problem with that is that, you know, you're keeping something inside you that's swelling like an over-congested dam ready to burst its walls, and it will actually break one day. And how that will affect you is yet to be determined. And I think that personally, it's important to, maybe not in the community, but to talk to people who are like-minded, or even reach out to people like Kate, for example, you know, and talk about your stories, and even write to him. And I think that's probably the best thing that you can possibly do as an experiencer, because, hey, look, I've been there before. I just decided to give the I don't give a crap approach, because I do live in a large city, and I don't particularly care what people think of me, but that's just my choice. But I do remember running a civilian organisation where people were able to come into a safe environment and talk about their experiences and their encounters. Even though it was UFO based, you know, some people spoke about, you know, Yowie experiences and hauntings, which we later expanded the group into. And, you know, there were people who came there on one occasion and they stood up and they spoke about their experiences and they thanked us for the opportunity. You know, they were holding that in for 20 or 30 years and they finally had the opportunity to talk about it. And they didn't have to worry about ridicule or being shunned because of the high strangeness of their experience and stories. And then you'd never see them again. You know, that was all they needed, and that was a perfect service.
Yep, absolutely. It's one thing I've learned is, like, some people just want to tell their story, and I get hundreds of emails every month of people just wanting to tell me, this is what happened to me. I don't want to come on the podcast. I just wanted to get this off my chest. So I completely understand that. What I want to do though is I do want to answer a question here, because I think it's rather good. Because essentially Kim Sultana wants to ask, when's the documentary coming out? Soon.
We're working on it. We're in post-production mode at the moment.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work. It's so much work, so much footage that we got to go through, because I had a happy trigger finger when it came to the recordings. And because of that, there is so many hours that we've got to go through. Literally hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of video data to kind of process. So yeah, we're getting through it, but I think we will have something, you know, roughly maybe 2-3 months away. And then I guess the next step from there will be kind of figuring out what platforms are going to look to take that one.
Well, that's right. I mean, we already have interest from a distributor over in the States. So yeah, look, I mean, it does take a long time to put something to this together, and being a collaborative effort too. We're working on some technicals at the moment too. So there's a lot going in the background. And I mean, Kay, you know, he does a podcast, and he's you know, running a business at the same time, and it's tough. And you know, I've also got another documentary that I'm working on too. Plus, I have a 9-to-5 job as well, Monday to Friday. So it's a tough call. So we try to squeeze these in our spare times, and we are working on it definitely. But we'll certainly keep everybody updated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once the momentum really builds on the edits, things are going to flow. And once technology is kind of working in harmony with us, that's gonna make our process a little bit easier too. So sooner rather than later. But we would ask, just hopefully be patient, because I definitely think the wait's going to be worth it.
Absolutely.
But mate, I reckon that pretty much does us for tonight, because we're basically at the end of the hour, and it always goes so quickly. So Attila, mate, I have to say thank you for your time tonight, man. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. These people probably don't realize, but we just catch up like this on a weekly basis, just to hang out, essentially, and pray to the technology gods to make our documentary talk to each other.
Absolutely.
which all our prayers kind of got answered this week. So thank you to Black Magic. If you're watching this, feel free to help us out on that one too. But mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you tonight. Where can people find out some of your other documentaries? Because you're obviously very established within the documentary world. Some of my personal favorites are the Track series. So Track and Tracking the Law, simply outstanding. Tracking the Law has a very handsome podcaster in it, so I do recommend people check that one out.
Oh, mate, you made it, mate. That's it. Well,
but people can find those. Where could they find those ones, mate?
Look, I mean, if you're after Track or Tracking the Law, I mean, it's, if you want to watch it for free, you just go to Tubi TV. But even if you just Google my name, Attila Kaldy with a K, or if you go to, there's a website that we have. It's a media website, which is Paranormal Investigators.tv, and it basically will lead you to the right platforms if you're interested in watching some of the documentaries that have been produced over, well, quite a few years. So yeah. Thank you very much for having me, Kate. Appreciate it.
No worries at all. And if anyone wants to share a story, because I do see a couple of people in the comments saying that they have stories that they do want to share, please email myself or Attila, like whoever you want to share that story with, because I am looking for guests for the podcast. If you have emailed me in the last 6 weeks, I'm absolutely getting back to every single email tomorrow. So if you're waiting on a reply from me, that's going to come then. But I will be looking for guests for season 20, 21, 22 of the podcast. So if you do have a story that you want to share, send it through. Let me know if you want to come on as a guest, because I will be taking written encounters as well for a couple of episodes, just to give people a chance to share their story with a wider audience, because I almost feel a little bit spoiled keeping all these fantastic stories to myself that are written in. So I'd love to share some of those with the public. But season 20 of the podcast will be coming out soon. I think it's coming out in about a week or two. So if you're a Believe Plus member, that's going to come out a week earlier for you, and you're going to get a massive drop of episodes, because I think there is about 6 or 7 of those ready to go as I speak. But everyone else, that's going to drop on the regular weekly cycle. But that pretty much does it for tonight. So thank you again, Attila. Thanks for spending your evening with me. And I can't wait to really sink our teeth into this edit on this documentary, because I can't wait to relive every experience again.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to it, mate. I really am. Thanks again.
No worries. All right, guys. If you like what you're seeing, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, so that way you'll never miss one of these lives, because we do try to do these 1 or 2 times a month, I guess, schedule permitting. But guys, that's going to pretty much do it for tonight. I've been Cade. I've been joined by Attila, and you've been watching the Believe live stream. Catch you later.
Bye. Oops.